Next up in the Heat Check Scouting Report series is French prospect Noa Essengue, a fluid, rangy forward who's been one of the top international producers in this cycle for Ratio Farm Ulm of the Bundesliga. Essengue stands at around 6'9" with a 6'11" wingspan, and across 51 games with Ulm per synergy has averaged 10.7 points, 4.7 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 1 steals, and 0.6 blocks per game while shooting 51% overall, 26% from 3, and 72% from the free throw line. He'll be only 18.5 on draft night, making him one of the youngest players in the class, just 3 days older than Cooper Flagg. Here's how Heat Check works. I'm going to pick a draft prospect and grade them on the most generally important skills and aspects of their game: athleticism, scoring, defense, passing, and playmaking, as well as feel for the game. After those 5, I'll touch on one more skill relative to that prospect that I think is going to have the most impact on their draft stock. That will be deemed the swing skill. Each skill will be graded 1 through 5 on the Heat Check chart, the lowest being freezing and the highest scorching. When it's all said and done, I'll divvy out one final score. For Noa Essengue's athleticism, I've gone with hot. Not only does he have a traditional athleticism punch, but he's also got that modern fluidity as well as some of the best pure tools in this draft, making him one of a few great upside bets in 25. Essengue's combination of athleticism and tools is one of the primary driving forces of both his own production and rising draft stock. He's 6'9" with long, spindly arms and a standing reach that rivals NBA bigs. He's really speedy when he gets ahead of steam and has a fairly graceful movement style when everything's flowing. He's got some bounce, though his Mr. Fantastic arms are doing the brunt of the legwork and finishing around the rim and deterring shots on defense. Relative to his size, he's a better horizontal mover than most, able to coordinate slides and show off some okay footwork, though this is certainly an area that could use some refinement and just generally a better athletic stance. The primary drawback here is his strength, which like most spindlier forwards can see him knocked around on both ends. In order to thrive in the NBA, continuing to finish strong and holding his own on defense, he'll need to bulk up, which is obviously possible for a still 18-year-old.
Overall though, Essengue likely the toolsiest player in this draft, and I'd expect NBA organizations to alter his draft stock as such.
For Essengue's scoring, I've gone with warm. While his offensive game as a whole needs refinement, the tools, feel, production, and age lead me to believe there's growth in his future, and maturation in any sense could lead to him being a solid role player in the NBA, if not more. Across his 51 games with Ulm, he scored 10.7 points per game on 51% shooting overall, cashing in on just 26% of 2.2 3-pointers attempted per game, and hitting on 72% of a great 5 free throws attempted per game. With his range, feel, and aggression, extremely notable skills given the timidness of this archetype in recent years, Essengue is a transition and interior play finishing monster, but he has a ways to go in rounding out his overall offensive game. To start, Essengue is obviously at his most comfortable screaming downhill. He shot a blistering 62% on 2s so far, effective at most play types that can get him to the rim. He scored 69% of his points off field goals at the rim, finishing at the same 69% rate. He finished 66 of 70 dunks for a 94% mark, but just 54% of layups, hinting to some needed development on his touch up close. Essengue scored the vast majority of his points getting out in transition. He naturally gravitates to space in general, but especially in running the open floor, where he's a deadly weapon with long strides, an unbelievable catch radius, and virtually unguardable with a head of steam towards the rim. It's not far-fetched to say that when he finds himself in an advantageous spot in transition, it's either 2 points or a foul, as he finished a highly elite 80% of his transition rim attempts for a true shooting of nearly 85%. He doesn't shy away from contact in any capacity, and his free throw rate is nearly all-time among draft prospects. Pretty absurd stuff. Essengue was mostly effective at other play types around the rim too, 63% cutting, 53% on putbacks, 50% as the roll man, and 67% off screens, which oddly enough he got downhill on a majority of the time. Again, once you get him in open lane, he's an exceptionally hard player to stop with athleticism, length, and some reactivity. The primary concern with Essengue is how he'll generate consistent half-court offense, and the secondary concern being his less than ideal handle. There's just no replicable mode he can turn to in the half-court to score efficiently or even help his teammates out. He's a currently bad shooter, is shooting 35% on limited post-ups, he's not a great screener, and his still up and down handle causes even the more on-rails offense to lack consistency. The hope for NBA teams looking to gamble on Essengue will be that he smooths this area out and is able to one day do a bit of everything, or hone one skill well to the point he gives himself options. The tightening of the handle especially would aid his overall game. We'll touch more on his range shooting later in the video, but his face value marks of 26% on low-ish volume aren't glaringly positive. Overall, as stated previously, I trust Essenge's combination of athletic tools, feel, and room for growth enough to project him to be at least a serviceable offensive role player and likely just a bit more. For Essenge's defense, I've gone with hot. This is more so a projection of where I think he can be opposed to where he is now, but it's a grade I feel pretty good about given his amalgamation of general skills. Across his 51 games so far, Essengue has posted 51 steals and 29 blocks, good for 1 and 0.6 per game respectively. It's true for all his stats, but I think it's especially important to remember here that he's doing this at 17/18 years old in a very solid pro league. With all the aforementioned athletic tools, length, fluidity, maneuverability, Essengue is able to offer a decent mix of both on and off-ball defense across a variety of different positions. Mostly forwards, but guards and even centers can sneak into his rotation. Moving and sometimes playing entirely like a wing, but with forward size and center adjacent length, he absolutely eats up ground with his speed and length, be it closing gaps quickly, jumping lanes, chasing players down, closing out, nearly anything. Off-ball, Essengue can disrupt passing lanes and offer some decent weak side shot blocking. He feels oddly comfortable defending on the ball, sliding his feet well and changing directions quicker than he should. When the physical attributes and his awareness and engagement are flowing, he can look like a defensive monster that nearly any NBA team would want to add. Now, the consistency, attentiveness, and engagement certainly aren't always there, more than likely due to him being a literal teenager, and he isn't always completely connected as a mover, but the bones of a strong defensive game, one I'm willing to bet on, are there. For Essenge's passing and playmaking, I've gone with warm. The stats don't yet look pretty, but I'm confident via the eye test that he'll be a fine passer in the NBA, potentially with some funk. In his 51 games, Essenge's seen an essential 1-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, dishing 58 to 57 turnovers for 1.1 per game on both. He's boasted a 10.2% assist percentage, pretty solid within his role. Most of Essenge's assists came in the same way the vast majority of his buckets did, in transition. He's constantly looking to push the pace, and found himself in position to make plays for others fairly often. One of my absolute favorite things about Essengue, and something that I think bolsters both this category and my general view of him, is how unselfish he can be as a passer. These lengthy, tool-driven archetypes usually don't have the feel to dish the ball the way that Essengue does, and in the open court are typically looking to force things downhill as hard and fast as humanly possible, sometimes to their detriment. Essengue shares the wealth, gives himself options, sets up teammates with some decently quick processing. The seamlessness isn't quite the same in the half court, though there's still flashes of some pretty great hub-esque stuff and decent ball moving for a forward. In summation, Essengue has a much more interesting passing blend than I thought, and despite some yucky turnovers, there's not a buku of bad ones. I'm not sure he ultimately taps into his passing highs with consistency, but the flashes at least lead me to believe he could eventually pare things down and do well in the NBA. For Noa Essenge's unquantifiable feel for the game, I've gone with warm. Being completely honest, this is one of the hardest categories of this entire class that I've had to grade. I feel like I've seen such a blend of both high and low feel in Essenge's tape that I've just kind of forced myself into a corner here in the middle ground. Essengue has some massively intriguing stuff. The general pro production at 18, a real naturalness to his game, some flashes in every category, scoring, defense, passing, handling, but there's also such a rawness to his overall game too that's unignorable. And some of these archetypes have had a hard time assimilating to the NBA in recent years. Ultimately, I think Essenge's feel for the game will be the catalyst as to where his game truly lands. The low end being a player who simply can't overcome some really hindering skills, the middle ground being a fine play-finishing, multi-positional defender with great size, and the high end potentially even being a star in the NBA. For Essenge's swing skill, we've gone with the obvious in shooting. He is the definition of a project shooter, not displaying a ton of touch or results thus far, but his NBA success could very well hinge on this area. As with any player of Essenge's archetype, shooting would be a massive boon to his overall game. The threat of a jumper would not only add a level to his scoring, but galvanize his downhill game too. He's cashing in on just a fourth of his 2.2 3-pointers per game right now, not showing a ton of consistency within that. There's just a few positives here for Essengue, the first being he's not a complete non-shooter. He's at least taking them, and while 25% isn't a great mark, it's certainly an improvable one. Another positive being that Essengue has seen some pretty massive growth already as a shooter. Across 15 games with Ulm last season, he shot just 4 threes total and hitting on only one of them for that same 25%. And lastly, his touch on a really high volume of free throws at 72% has been solid and is usually a decent indicator of continued increased shooting. Generally, I feel a little less great about Essenge's long-term shooting outcome than I do some of the other 2025 prospects. His shot form in general doesn't sway me. I don't love the consistency, the energy transfer, the base. So I think if he does develop a true 3-ball, it is likely a ways away. The grade. I've gone with a grade of 7.9 for Ulm's Noa Essengue. The majorly plus tools, flashes of great stuff overall, a phenomenal baseline of play finishing and defense, and more importantly, room for a half decade of growth before he even turns 24, are all things that could lead him to be a lottery pick for me and many others. The 25 NBA draft is going to pack a star punch, not only with Cooper Flagg and more near the top, but at least a few of these middling lottery guys or even late first are going to drastically exceed expectations. With teams hunting down those players, Essengue feels like one who could sneak into that range as just a really solid contributor for a long time once the kinks are worked out. In doing this deep dive, I've decided I'm fine with Essengue as a swing for any teams in the top 10 or late lottery in need of talent in general. That's it for this one. Let me know what you think of Noa Essengue, what you grade him, where you draft him, drop who you want to see in the next heat check, and we'll see you next time.